Every 7 minutes, a person in America dies from something type 2 diabetes did to their body. Not suddenly, slowly, over years, while their morning numbers crept up and nobody explained why. Here is what almost no one is told. You do not lower blood sugar by taking food away. You lower it by adding the right food in. 10 of them, and they work by talking directly to your cells. Stay with me, and I will show you exactly which 10, how each one works, and the order to add them, so your fasting number starts moving in about 10 days. I am Dr. William Lee. I have spent close to 30 years studying how food talks to your biology, and I want to be honest with you in the first minute. The usual blood sugar advice is broken. Cut the carbs, avoid the sugar, stop this, stop that. And yet, nearly 98 million American adults now have prediabetes, and more than 8 in 10 of them do not know it. If restriction worked, the numbers would be falling. They are climbing. So, we are going to do the opposite of restriction today, and I will show you why it works better. But first you need to understand what is actually broken inside you, because if you do not, you will try these foods for a week, not feel a miracle, and quit. And that would be a real loss because the results are real. They just need context. Picture your cells as houses on a street. Each house has a front door. Insulin is the mail carrier, and the package it delivers is glucose, your fuel. When everything works, the carrier knocks, the door opens, the package goes inside, and your blood sugar stays steady. But after years of high sugar meals and constant spikes, the people inside stop answering. Too many packages already. So, the glucose piles up on the street. That pile up is your morning reading. That is the number on your meter. Standard medicine mostly does two things: push more mail carriers out there with more insulin, or slow down how many packages get made. Both treat the street, neither fixes the house. What we actually need is to get those doors opening again, and every food I'm about to give you does exactly one of 3 things. It slows how fast the packages arrive, so the street never floods. It cools the inflammation that made the people stop answering. Or it repairs the lock so insulin can grip the door again. Slow the flood, cool the fire, fix the lock, hold on to those 3. Everything today hangs on them. One thing before we start. If you are on insulin or an older drug called a sulfonylurea, pay close attention to the safety note at the end, because these foods work fast enough that your dose may need to come down, and that is a conversation for your doctor, not a decision to make alone. Do not stop any prescription. Bring this list to your next appointment. Now, food number 1, fenugreek seeds. I know it sounds unfamiliar, and your instinct might be to skip it. Don't. Inside this small amber seed is a soluble fiber called galactomannan. Add water, and it swells into a thick gel that wraps around the carbohydrates in your meal and slows everything down. Carbs that would flood your bloodstream in 20 minutes now trickle in over an hour. No flood, no spike, no panic from your pancreas. It also carries a compound, 4-hydroxyisoleucine, that nudges your pancreas to release insulin only when your blood sugar is actually high, so it does not push you too low. Here's the pattern I keep seeing. Susan Parker, 69, a retired secretary from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, walked in carrying 3 prescription bottles and exhausted, not from the disease, but from managing it, while her fasting numbers sat between 160 and 190 every morning. We added fenugreek, one food, in one specific way. 9 days later, she was at 134 and called to ask if her meter was broken. How to use it. Soak 1 teaspoon of whole seeds overnight in water. Then in the morning, drink the water and eat the seeds before breakfast. Start with half a teaspoon for the first few days so your gut can adjust. Food number 2, Ceylon cinnamon. Not the cinnamon in your cabinet right now, which is almost certainly cassia. Cassia carries a compound called coumarin that stresses your liver at the daily doses that actually move blood sugar. You want Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon, in health food stores or online. Here is what it does. Its polyphenols mimic insulin. They bind to your cell receptors and start opening the door before the mail carrier even arrives, and they slow how fast your stomach empties. A study in the journal Diabetes Care found that 1/4 to a half teaspoon a day for 40 days meaningfully lowered fasting glucose in people with type 2 diabetes. Stir 1/4 teaspoon into your coffee or oatmeal each morning alongside a meal with carbs. If you make one change today, make it this one. Just make sure it says Ceylon. Food number 3, broccoli sprouts. And this is where people go wrong, because regular broccoli is not the same thing. The active compound is sulforaphane, and 3-day-old sprouts contain 50 to 100 times more of it than mature broccoli. That is the difference between a real dose and a trace. Here is what most people never learn. When you have insulin resistance, your liver runs an overnight glucose factory. It keeps pumping out sugar while you sleep, which is why you can fast for 8 hours and wake up higher than when you went to bed. Sulforaphane targets the enzymes driving that overnight production. Researchers at Lund University in Sweden gave concentrated sulforaphane to people already on metformin and saw fasting glucose drop, with the biggest effect in the hardest to control cases. Eat about a quarter cup of raw sprouts a day, on a salad or in a sandwich. Do not cook them hot. Heat destroys the compound. Food number 4, avocado. I need you to set down the old fear of fat, because that fear pushed a whole generation toward low-fat products loaded with sugar. The fat in an avocado is monounsaturated, the same family as olive oil, and it works 2 ways. Eaten with any carb, its fat and fiber slow your stomach so glucose trickles instead of floods. And that same fat improves the fluidity of your cell membranes. Remember the doors? Healthy fat makes the hinges work, so the insulin receptor grips better. Half an avocado a day, on your eggs, on toast, in a salad with a starch. It is the most practical item on this whole list because it takes no preparation. Food number 5, chia seeds. Drop them in water, and in 10 minutes they turn the glass to gel, absorbing 10 times their weight. That is what happens in your stomach, too, a physical barrier that slows carb absorption to a crawl. But there is a second job people miss. Chia is rich in alpha-linolenic acid, a plant omega-3. Chronic inflammation is one of the main drivers of insulin resistance, jamming the receptor at the cell surface, and this fat helps cool that fire over time. Cool the inflammation and the receptors start working again. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day, stirred into yogurt or a glass of water with lemon and a pinch of that Ceylon cinnamon. Drink plenty of water alongside. Let me group the next 2, because they share a job. Food number 6, fatty fish, and food number 7, walnuts. Neither is mainly about slowing glucose. They work on the root cause, the invisible, low-grade inflammation that sits in your tissues for years and degrades your insulin signaling. Salmon, mackerel, and sardines carry omega-3s called EPA and DHA, among the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory compounds we know. They reshape the membrane where your insulin receptor lives, and when that membrane is healthier, the receptor works better. Aim for 2 palm-sized servings a week. Canned mackerel and sardines are some of the most cost-effective, nutrient-dense foods you can buy, so budget is not an excuse here. Walnuts do the same membrane work in plant form, and they protect your endothelium, the thin lining of your blood vessels that high glucose damages first, which is exactly why blood sugar and heart disease travel together. A small handful, 7 to 10 walnuts, mid-morning instead of crackers, not in addition to them. Food number 8, whole eggs. The fear of yolks drilled into Americans for decades was one of the most damaging nutrition mistakes of the last century, pushing people towards cereal and toast that hammered their blood sugar every morning. An egg has almost no carbohydrate, so on its own, it barely moves glucose. But its real power is the second meal effect. Start your day with 2 or 3 whole eggs instead of cereal, and you blunt your blood sugar not just at breakfast, but at lunch and dinner too. Susan told me later that swapping her cereal for 3 scrambled eggs with half an avocado was the change that made everything else possible. Her mid-morning crashes stopped, and her sweet cravings before noon nearly vanished. It was not the medication, it was breakfast. Food number 9, apple cider vinegar, the one you can watch work on your own meter the same evening. The active ingredient is acetic acid, and it does 2 things at once. It slows how fast your stomach empties and, the surprising part, it helps your muscles pull glucose out of the blood directly, without waiting for the insulin door to open at all. Dr. Carol Johnston at Arizona State University showed that a spoonful of vinegar before a carb meal cut the post-meal spike by 19 to 34% in people with insulin resistance. That is a drug-level effect from a few dollars of vinegar. 1 tablespoon in a full 8-ounce glass of water, 10 to 15 minutes before a carb-heavy meal. Always dilute it, never drink it straight. It is hard on tooth enamel. And if you are on blood sugar medication, clear this with your doctor first, because combined, they can drop you faster than expected. Food number 10, lentils. And this one is the whole argument of this video in a single food. Lentils are a carbohydrate, and they lower your blood sugar. If that sounds contradictory, that is exactly the point. Lentils are built on resistant starch, a carb your small intestine cannot digest. It passes through and gets fermented in your large intestine into short-chain fatty acids that actually improve insulin sensitivity. Add their soluble fiber and plant protein, and you get a food that steadies your blood sugar into the next meal. Swapping white rice or potato for lentils even 2 or 3 times a week measurably lowers your A1C, your 3-month average. Half a cup to a cup, 2 to 4 times a week, in a soup or cold, in a salad with olive oil and that vinegar. Now, let me finish Susan's story, because the list only matters if it holds up over time. She had watched her own mother lose function slowly, first the neuropathy in her feet, then her kidneys, then her eyesight. She was not scared of insulin. She was scared of that trajectory. We did not cut her carbs to nothing. We added 1 food at a time. In 10 days, her numbers moved. By week 3, she asked me to check whether her meter needed calibration, because the readings looked too good. At 8 weeks working with her primary care doctor, her fasting glucose averaged 118, and her doctor started lowering her medication. At 3 months, her A1C had come down from 8.4 to 6.9. She went from the diabetic range to the borderline range in 90 days, not by starving, by adding. 2 years later, her numbers have held, and she is on 1 medication instead of 2. I know what some of you are thinking. If food is this powerful, why did no one tell me? Because there is no prescription pad for lentils, and a 10-minute visit does not leave time to explain a mail carrier and a locked door. That is not a conspiracy. It is just the shape of the system. It does not change what works. So here is the whole video in one pattern. Slow the flood, cool the fire, fix the lock. The fiber foods, fenugreek, chia, lentils, avocado, slow how fast glucose arrives. The anti-inflammatory foods, fatty fish, walnuts, broccoli sprouts, cool the fire jamming your receptors. And the receptor foods, Ceylon cinnamon, vinegar, eggs, help the doors open again. Do that meal after meal, and the cells that stopped answering slowly start opening on the first knock. That is what reversing insulin resistance actually looks like. Here is your 5-step start, tonight and tomorrow. Tonight, soak 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in water on your counter. Tomorrow morning, drink the water and eat the seeds before breakfast. Next time you shop, buy Ceylon cinnamon and add a 1/4 teaspoon to your coffee. Tomorrow, swap your cereal or toast for 2 or 3 eggs and half an avocado. Before your biggest carb meal, drink 1 tablespoon of vinegar in a full glass of water. And this week, swap white rice for lentils at least twice and get fish on the menu 2 nights. Do not try all 10 at once. Pick 2 or 3, build the habit, then layer in the rest. The compounding is where the change lives. Now, the safety note I promised, and I need you to hear it. If you take insulin or a sulfonylurea, drugs like glipizide or glyburide, these foods can lower your blood sugar enough that your current dose becomes too much, and that can cause a dangerous low. Do not start this quietly and wait to see what happens. Bring this list to your next appointment, tell your doctor you are making these changes, and ask them to monitor your numbers and adjust your dose as your body improves. That is not optional. That is how you make this safe. You are not broken and you are not failing at your health. Your body responded to its environment exactly the way it was built to. Give it a better environment and watch what it does. Start with 1 food, the one that fits your kitchen most easily, and try it for 5 days. If this is the kind of explanation you have been looking for, the kind that respects your biology instead of just handing you a prescription, subscribe and stay with this community, because we are learning to read our own bodies here. And tell me in the comments which of these 10 you are starting with, and your fasting number this morning if you are comfortable. I read them, and watching this community's numbers come down is the whole reason I do this. I am Dr. William Lee, and next week I will show you what your body is doing while you sleep. It might surprise you.